You're listening to DraftKings Network.
Everybody in your crew identifies as either Big Mac Burger, McNuggets, or McCrispy Sandwich. But you're the Filet-O-Fish Sandwich all day. That crispy fish, that savory tartar sauce, that melty cheese, that pillowy bun. Yeah, you get it. Every time.
And if you love the Filet-O-Fish, right now you can catch two of the classics you love for just $6. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
We have talked a lot of Russell Wilson today, but we're bringing in the ultimate authority. I don't know where Russell Wilson lands on her list of favorite athletes ever, favorite football players ever, but Mina Kimes is a giant Seahawks fan, and I'm guessing that Super Bowl that he brought you is probably your greatest sports feeling, is it not? The Seahawks winning the Super Bowl makes you feel as good as anything has ever felt in sports?
I would say the NFC Championship game before the Super Bowl is my greatest sports memory. The tip, German, the Super Bowl itself, as you guys probably remember, was pretty anticlimactic after that. But that game was, I remember everything about that game. I remember how it began. I remember my feeling when it ended. That was just electric.
So I will talk to you about the details here. I don't know what you found fascinating about the Broncos releasing him. I think we can make the argument for this being among the worst trades ever made. But before we do that, Greg Cody shocked us all with a controversial opinion after he was caught by surveillance leaving a toilet seat up. So do you want to bring this up with Mina Kimes? Oh, now you're ashamed. Now you're ashamed?
Okay.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Mina.
You have no choice, Greg.
Okay,
just go for
listen,
it.
all I was saying is I am 100% for the empowerment of women.
We don't need the
Okay,
qualifiers.
no.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Anything that starts with that sentence.
Okay,
what I'm
saying is a woman doesn't need me to put the seat down. She's perfectly capable of putting the seat down herself. I don't understand why it's like it's such a sub misdemeanor on the criminal level. It's crazy.
First, Greg also needs to state he's married to a woman and he respects women because he told us that on the front end the first time. Yeah,
That's correct.
As the father of a daughter, you're not the father of a daughter, right?
No,
So,
I have a daughter-in-law. I have a wife,
Granddaughter.
that kind of thing, a granddaughter.
He loves women.
It's grand.
I do.
His love of women.
You
has
had to
been-
remind me.
Big fan of women. Women invented beer.
I have a daughter-in-law, that kind of thing.
That's right.
Guys, I have been waiting 5
Windshield
months to
wipers.
say this.
Yeah.
As the mother of a son, I am going to do everything in my power to teach him to put the toilet seat down, not because of gender roles or anything like in terms of, I guess, politeness, but when you leave a seat up, you are making the next person think about you using the bathroom. I find that that's as much of a reason to do it as any.
If I see someone leaving a public restroom, hey, what am I supposed to convince myself that I'm the first one to ever use that bathroom? People use bathrooms. They come and go. I don't care who's used the bathroom before me.
You're right.
But when you touch it, you're touching what they did. Am I like you're coming into physical contact with their detritus, which you should try to minimize as much as possible.
But then I'm washing my hands, I'm lathering, I'm soaping. It's like this.
That has
I'm going
nothing to
like
do
this.
with what you left, the crime scene you left behind.
It's not a crime scene. First of all, I put the lid up so that I don't accidentally urinate on the lid, right?
What are you asking?
Greg,
Yes, that's why you do it. That is why you
I
do
do.
it.
I don't know why you do it. I can't explain
So
that.
if you follow me in
Yeah.
the can and you see the lid up, you can be guaranteed that I did not urinate with the lid down.
Right.
See,
Maybe
so
the person before.
I'm
right.
doing the next person a favor.
Yes.
You know.
It's like washing the dishes, essentially. Like you're shielding, you're assuming the next person is a man. I guess, let me ask you this. Do you think it's different if the next person is a man? Like if you, a man, coming into a bathroom, do you want the lid left up or do you want it down?
It makes no difference to me. It honestly doesn't. I will put the lid down if I'm sitting to do my business. I will put the lid down. if I'm standing to do my business, although I do.
See, I put the
urinate
lid
sitting.
up in a public bathroom. I go lid up because I like the hover technique. I do. I'm
Okay.
not sitting on anything.
Everything when the
point.
lid is up.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
But you don't have to worry about women
up.
following you in a public restroom.
True.
But yeah, right, exactly. This isn't a public. This is like a household discussion, right? When the lid is up, whatever Jackson Pollock-esque detritus you left behind, that's your work. If you're in a household with a woman, she knows that you did that. You did that. I don't understand why you would want to remind her of that when she walks into the bathroom.
How long can Stugotz squat for? I mean, your legs must be burning after like 10 seconds.
Especially if I have a hanger.
Oh God!
Whoa!
Are you a dog?
I mean, you go sit in the penalty box.
Why?
No, we've all been there.
Go shit in the penalty box.
What?
Yes, Mina. Okay,
I didn't bring this up.
Russell Wilson. Is it the worst trade that you've seen?
Ooh, that I've seen is a good qualifier because I don't really remember the Herschel. The Herschel Walker trade is probably still number one when you look at not just the volume of the picks, but the players that those picks turned into. And that's kind of where, like, when you look at the Russell Wilson trade, we're talking about how bad it was historically. And it makes a pretty good case for number two. You're considering both the trade and the contract, because the trade itself on its face wouldn't be as bad given the players exchanged, given the fact, last year Russ was basically an average quarterback, obviously didn't live up to the trade at all. But the reason why the trade is so horrible is because they gave him this gigantic $245 million extension, the new money of which they will never pay him because it was 2 years out and they cut him before the new money kicked in. That makes it number two. But you have to look at those things together, right? Because when we talk about what's the worst trade ever, I think we're considering all of it. When we talk about the Deshaun Watson trade, which I think is in the mix as well, we're considering the guaranteed money too. So I would say Wilson probably right now, you'd probably put two behind Walker, but then we have to see how the Watson trade fully pans out.
When you keep saying number two, I'm afraid that Stugotz is going to chime in from that. The penalty box with the app is what I'm scared of. $85 million in dead cap money. Tell me what that means. Explain to me how bad that is. And also $111 million over the last 2 years from two teams to not play. He's got $111 million in dead cap money. Explain to me the math of all that.
Well, it's crazy because even 5 years ago, I think, you would never see a team considering that. And this really struck me not now, but when we talked about the possibility of the Broncos, really after the first season, moving on from Russ, and how quickly the conversation shifted to, well, in 2024, it's $85 million, and if they do a post-June 1st, they can cut it in half. You never would have said that a few years ago, but it's a new NFL, I think, where increasingly owners, and the Broncos have a new, very wealthy owner, are willing to take that kind of hit at the quarterback position, cut their losses, despite the fact that it's going to cost it. Forget the cap space, just the amount of cash that they have to pay out. They're going to have to pay out if he doesn't take a lot of money to play for a new team. That didn't happen 5 years ago. But now whenever we look at even when we were talking about Kyler Murray and whether the Cardinals would move on from him, it now appears that they definitely won't. But there was a conversation, well, they might be willing to absorb that kind of hit. With Watson, by the way, people are already looking at his contract and saying, okay, well, this year it's impossible, but maybe in 2024, or 2025 rather, it's $80 million. That's crazy that we have sort of normalized it, but that's where things are in the NFL, particularly with the rising cap too.
That's what I was afraid of. Before you came on, Stugotz was making essentially that argument on air.
She has no idea what that was.
Yeah, it's him playing with a fart app because we were talking about whoopee cushions before, and this is what we do. But he was making the argument before you came on that he would trade Tua and keep Russell Wilson as the Dolphin quarterback, and it was met with horror by the shipping container.
Looks like she just smelled a fart.
And what I wanted to ask you is, what does Russell Wilson actually have left? What do you expect from him as a quarterback?
First, I gotta say, something just occurred to me this morning. As I was listening to that sound, I wasn't grossed out because I think maybe this is one of the benefits of having a baby. I'm not really grossed out by human feces as much as I was before. It just doesn't have the same effect on me. So that sounded kind of nothing for me. So he was average last year, which is kind of what makes this conversation weirdly unsatisfying. Or, I mean, it'd be one thing if he was awful and he was really bad the year before. It'd be another thing if he was a desirable quarterback and we would be wanting to put him on a lot of teams, as I guess Stu is, mystifyingly. I don't really see that. But he really was kind of in that, I would say, 17 to 25 range last season, maybe a little bit higher, very conservative, showed a bit more mobility than he did the year before. He's just sort of a replacement level veteran at this point, and that's what makes it tricky. And by the way, that's what makes him, I actually think, interesting, not for the Dolphins, but for some other teams, because if he is willing to play for very little money, and all accounts suggest that's possible because he's being paid so much by the Broncos and he has no interest in doing them a favor with an offset, right? He's just going to take their cash. If he takes a lot of cash from another team, that would cut into the Broncos payment, but he doesn't want to do that. That makes, to me, him more desirable as either a potential starter for a capped out team or a bridge quarterback than, say, I don't know, Baker Mayfield making over $40 million. I mean, would you rather have Russell Wilson making below, in the single digit millions, let's say, or Baker Mayfield on a multi-year contract, 40 million plus, which is some of the numbers being thrown around? I'd rather have Russell Wilson.
Well, that's the argument he was making with Tua.
Yeah, Tua's a lot better than Baker Mayfield.
Thank you, Mina.
Yeah. Wow. People have really lost. What's the? You guys tell me. Actually, I don't have my finger on the pulse of Dolphins Twitter because I have so many accounts muted. What is the vibe right now around Tua in Miami?
He's still polarizing down here. I mean, he just led the league. He just made the Pro Bowl, led the league in a couple of categories. I've always been very pro Tua. I think he's a really good quarterback, but he's not mobile. He's not a running threat, and that's an issue with him. But I think they ought to give him a big contract. I was going to ask you the same, Mina. What is your estimation of Tua? Because you do hear a lot of differing opinions.
Yeah. My preference, if I were them, would be to give him a contract that's not with the top tier of your Herberts, your Burrows, your whatever. I don't know if he would take that, though, frankly. I would balk at giving him that kind of contract. But if you give him something more affordable, obviously more than what Geno Smith got, but less than that top tier, I think that would be ideal.
Dan, Mina, Treading's up. I want to ask you a question because it's draft prep season. The combine just happened, and you are gearing up for the NFL draft. What one thing has stood out the most in your draft prep so far?
Well, the one thing that stood out the most, this is, I'm sure you guys are aware, it's the best wide receiver class I've ever seen. I've gotten down to probably like wide receiver 10, 12 in watching, and you can get like a truly like a legit number one wide receiver in the second round this year. I fully believe that. It was borne out at the combine. The top three guys, or probably the top two guys, didn't work out. Rome Odunze worked out. He was amazing. He looked amazing. But even beyond that, you're talking about guys. A.D. Mitchell from Texas will probably go he'll go higher in the first round than I thought now. But that was a player I absolutely loved. Behind him, you're just seeing Ladd McConkey, Johnny Wilson, all these. There's so many talented wide receivers, which makes free agency really interesting. We just saw Mike Evans get what was reported at about, I think, $25 or $26 million a year. And I keep waiting for a team to say, why would we pay this position, seeing not only how good this draft is, but how good every draft for the last 5 years have been, how good these rookie receivers have been. And I think for Miami, that's going to be an interesting question with the future of Tyreek Hill, obviously, coming up to the end of his contract. And I'll be interested to see if that's a position they have an eye on in the draft because of that.
What do you think is going to happen with Justin Fields?
I don't know. That was the thing where in Indianapolis at the Combine talking to folks, I didn't hear his name linked with many teams. And right now there's quite a few teams that need a quarterback. There's 3 surefire picks at the top of the draft, and then there's this sort of next tier of 3, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., some of whom will go in the first round. But there's more than 3 additional teams that need quarterbacks. So you're looking at Minnesota, Denver, Atlanta, Vegas, that's outside the top 3, right? So you would think, well, one of those teams would be a likely destination for Justin Fields for a second-round pick, say. But I didn't hear any links. The Kirk Cousins domino kind of needs to fall. And after that, I think things will be clarified. If I were one of those teams, would take a flyer on him. Absolutely. Atlanta's a team, or Pittsburgh are 2 teams that I think make a lot of sense. But it wasn't like a topic of conversation or even gossip. And that was something I heard from other people as well.
What quarterback movement things do you find most interesting?
I think I'm very curious at this draft to see if picks 2 or 3 are actually for sale. There's an assumption that it's going to go quarterback, right? But I don't think I don't know for certain what New England is going to do. I know what I would do. I would take a quarterback at pick 3. I've thought about that. But because there's so much desire for those 3 picks, and you could potentially get quite a haul if you were to move down. You think back to Trey Lance, that trade, you remember, was for pick 3, multiple firsts involved. You'd think at least that. Because I think these 3 quarterbacks are better prospects and there's more tape. It's going to be tempting for New England, especially given how many holes there are on that roster. And I know the teams that I mentioned earlier, your Minnesotas, your Denvers, et cetera, one of them is going to be very aggressively trying to get there. The question, though, for me isn't whether one of those teams wants to get there. I do believe it is, but rather whether New England is willing to move down. I truly don't know, because it's a new regime, so it's a bit of a black box.
Mina, nice seeing you. Always nice seeing you. I'm sorry that Greg Cody horrified you.
More than the fart
only thing
sounds?
that really horrified me was the hanger. The hanger.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
It's just perfect punctuation for the show. Let's just have that be the ending to today's show. The hanger. A hovering Stugotz talking about the hanger.
It's not great.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.